That's what makes the community of God work. And that's what God laid on my heart, is to build a ministry that everybody works together to make this happen. You know, it can drain. You all hear about the cookie cutter and regular typical missionary. They got to go fundraise $400,000 before they even started. I was telling this to Mark Irway while I was visiting him. I said, Mark, did you realize our first year, Glenda and I went down to $13,654 for the year? For the year. I lived on my air mattress. I had a borrowed pot and pan. We didn't have our stuff. When that container arrived in the end of April, it was like Christmas all over again. We were doing prison ministry by hitching a ride every day. And so those things made us better and appreciate what we really have. And like my dad said when he was down, my dad did come down. Not many people know this, and he's going to kill me for saying it, because he likes to keep it secret. But I haven't talked to my dad in a long time. But he accepted Christ as a Savior. And he started coming back, and he spent 9 weeks with us. And he even said, "You've come a long way, Michael. Your mother would be proud." She passed away 12 years ago this December. And so I said, Dad, Mom always said to us, if you ever came back, no matter what, you never failed. Never. Always keep that in mind. It's good advice. It keeps me strong, and my wife strong. And so, the new things are going on. I promised you I would. After I get done, I'm going to open up for question and answers. Anything that comes to your mind, I'll try to answer as best I can. So the new things are coming out. One thing we do need, and we really do need a lot of, is volunteers back here. If you haven't noticed, the ministry is really very active now. We have a lot of volunteers, and our helping hands need more volunteers. Hands just to help out. Jerry is doing a great job. Heather and James have been kicking in major time. Next year we got a golf tournament coming up. Shh, no, you need to frame it now, Heather. And we have another 5K going on. What you don't understand is all those donations helps me to keep going on those building projects when we don't have teams. What we did this year, just between my dad and I, we plastered that entire new school building that you've seen on Facebook, those full 4 classrooms, inside and out in 8 days. Painted it all, put the roof on, Brad was down, we were framing, we gave things ready, we got electrical in. And actually for our team coming in July, they have painting 167 gallons of paint to put on. So I hope they like painting. So we need volunteers, and we need more volunteers who are willing to come to Honduras. My dad's 76 years old. He came with a cane. He walked out on his own. Welcome to boot camp. I didn't work him. I said, Dad, take it easy. You know, when I was plastering, I was mixing my own mud. I said, Dad, just sponge. If you can get on the plank up there with me on the scaffolding, he goes, I'll try. You know, and by the time he got halfway around the building, he was doing it on his own. And I'm like, you're doing good, Dad. And so he worked right in the sun. And he did. He's a miller. He's stubborn. But he worked hard. And so we need more people to come on down on teams and to participate. But the most important thing is to witness what's going on in Tegucigalpa, in the schools. James, you got to see last year when we were doing the Bible studies. So you know that is there. So these things are real. The other thing is the sponsorship program. I know many of you were sponsoring, and praise the Lord. But you've got a lot of friends, a lot of contacts. That's what got this ministry going, is the networking that you guys do to keep us going. I can't make it back every year like we used to. It costs too much money, and this ministry is going so much that it's hard for us to separate and leave. And that's why Glenda's there. She's actually continuing with the Friday Bible study. She's continuing all this stuff, except for going to Tegucigalpa. So those things are going on still. So she's taking on the brunt while I'm here. But it's hard for us to peel away. They've gotten so attached. Hondurans like regiment. They like agendas. They like schedules. And if you get them that and you be faithful to it, they'll continue until they've grown to where they can go on their own. And that's what we're doing. And so, yeah, so the sponsorship program, if you can find people to pick up a child, that'd be huge, because we do get lists over 100 kids every year. Glenda gets so overwhelmed with phone calls. Yo necesito una beca, I need a scholarship. Yo soy una madre pobre, I'm a mother that's poor. Tengo bajo de recursos, I'm very poor. And so they'll give us a story. And it's amazing how Glenda just writes and writes, and then we start praying. Father, there's a list. You provide. I'm not going to ask. Just for my email, and that's it. And He's provided. One of the things we are going to change, and we haven't changed it since 2018, and this is going to be rough or not, but we got to raise the price a little bit. We're going to raise it $20. So grades 1 through 6, we're bringing it to $180. We held those numbers from 2018. Brad's not lying. The Lord takes the fish and the bread and divides it. If you really see what's in our house, just for example, for our senior or 7th through 12th grade, I'm buying 600 yards of fabric. That's $6,000 in fabric I got sitting in my house. We buy $15,000 to $16,000 in shoes and sneakers. They come in. That's why him and I go on a shoe run. We're like, shoe run! And so we jump in the truck and we try timing ourselves to get through the whole thing as fast as we can. It just gives us motivation. So nothing more. But, I mean, you're talking 10,000 notebooks. And that, actually what they see is just the first run. That's just 7 through 12. When they leave, Andrea and myself do grades 1 through 6. And that's all specialty stuff. Graph paper, notebooks, everything. It's all specialty. So we're raising 180, 1 through 6, and then 290, 7 through 12. That'll be sent to you via mail with those renewal forms, and so that'll be coming in, okay? So like I said, only $20 increase because God has really, really blessed us. You have an idea. I had this year, our distributor for the shoes and sneakers said, well, I'm going to increase it. Now, it may not seem like a lot, but $3.50 per shoe or sneaker. But you're adding almost 400 shoes and sneakers times 2, so it's 800 pairs. So you're adding a lot of money. I was like, no. And so, we'll go $1. So I rebutted back. She accepted. Okay. So then when I walk into the backpacks, buy backpacks, we're buying $7,000 to $8,000 in backpacks. So this is not little stuff that we're buying. We're buying a lot of stuff. So yeah, it's amazing how they'll drop prices almost 50%. Brad's witnessed it. I go in there and I haunt bad. They see me coming like Michael. So yeah, so that's what's going on. Like I said, we need volunteers. We need more sponsors for our children. And the work is still going on. Now, the biggest question that everybody asks me, how much longer with the construction? Yeah, I'm 53. Still feel pretty good. But, like I said, because Glenda asked me the same question, I'll be honest. She sees me coming home and I'm moaning and groaning at nighttime in bed, and because the pain's so bad. But when you're laying 2,500 block in 4 weeks, it's cranking. And so, yeah, so when you're doing that kind of work, back in construction, doing it on your own, it gets old. But I say, Glenda, if I can make it till I'm 60, I'll be blessed. And we can get as many schools in. That's my desire, is get as many schools we can get in and help them. And then she says, what are you going to do next? And I said, full evangelism. Going back to where we started. Remember, this thing started with pure evangelism in prison ministry. I spent 55 hours a week in prison, preaching, teaching, loving, hugging, listening, crying. And it's time to go back to preaching. And that's where God's guiding me. And so that's the future that's coming ahead. So as the body wears out, but the brain doesn't, and the mouth will never wear out, I promise you. So that's where we're headed. So I want to open up with questions and answers, if I can answer them. And if anybody has a question, just raise your hand and ask away. Anybody? Go ahead.
Mike, you said you had 14 schools with sponsored kids, and have you worked in all 14 of those schools doing something, or?
8 of them. Yeah. I've worked in 8 of those schools. The other 6, no. The reason being is a lot of them are in private. They went into a private sector, or they're in areas that I will not help at all. The reason being that either we'll get robbed or our teams cannot go in safely. Because
do they need as much work as another 8?
Yeah. The other issue that I found in 2 particular schools, the teachers are just as corrupt as the gang members.
But you're helping the kids, though.
Definitely,
you know?
yeah, we're helping the kids. We feel that's the most important thing, and so the building, we've graduated quite a few actually. Carlos, Christian, Javier, and a few others in those type of schools.
Can the kids transfer to different schools, or are they neighborhood schools?
Yeah, they're neighborhood schools, and they can transfer, but the parents are stubborn. We've transferred. In fact, one I graduated, Joe Miller. I think Harold remembers Joe. You guys came down. Joe Miller sponsored a child. It's your Elizabeth's sister, older sister. She was going into MS-13, street gang, and it was in one of those schools. And so Glenn and I sat her down, talked to her. I said, "You're getting out of the gang, and we will find a way to get you across the city to another school, not even in the area, and get you across." And she actually graduated, and she's got 6 months, and she'll be graduating university. So yeah, so she's really doing well. So that's awesome.
The other question I have regarding the uniforms, I'm assuming that you have them made because you are providing income for people in the country as they're making residents ordering uniforms.
No, actually, grade 7 through 12, because of each high school and middle school, because they're one, they have a dress code, so they have their own specific color scheme. So if you see a uniform, you can actually pick out the school that they're in.
Okay. So you can't order those?
No, can't order those. Anything that's got the typical blue, they've switched because the new president, they went back to actually the original Honduran colors, which I kind of like. The original Honduran flag was more of a turquoise, dark navy blue. So the original flag is that, and that's where they made all the uniforms. So those you can buy, and we do for our grades 1 through 6. So yeah, good questions. Anybody else? Anybody? Rita.
I'm interested in the ones you mentioned, that some of them have gone on to college, university. I know the kids we've sponsored have been mostly a female school, but mostly high school.
Yep.
And a couple of mine, I know Glenda has written me, have gone on to the university. Where do they get the money for that?
That's the nice thing. The public university in Honduras is pretty much free. Yeah, you have to pay the enrollment. We have other sponsors that have children sponsored in the same school. What we pay for, or the sponsor pays for, is the enrollment, which is 4 times a year, and it's equivalent of probably about $10. And then now they're getting into textbooks, which we'll pick up, and that's what we pay for as well, but everything else is free. So they'll pay for textbooks, like Andrea, who works for us, she's going for psychology, so she had to have a doctor's smock, and then have psychology written on it, so we had to pay for the printing. And then she's into some books, but that's pretty much it. So that's the blessing. The opposite of it, though, is that if you went in for a 4-year degree, it'll take you 10 years. Because the government's controlling how many classes you get. So you may go online and submit that you want 5 classes, but you may not get all 5. The government will tell you, no, you get 2 this time, especially if your grades are low. If you're less than 80 average, that's why I keep telling all the kids, if you get those grades up, you'll get more classes and get out. And so now they're getting it in their head. Like Louise, he's going to graduate finally next year. He's been there, 6 years already? And he finally realized, like an aha moment, like, hey, maybe he's right, I'll get my grades up. And he did, and he started getting 5 classes every semester, and he comes over, sorry, my grade. And I'm like, it's okay. So you just give them a hug. But yeah, that's how it works in Honduras. If you go to private, like Sehu Tech, and we sponsored one, the Irways and the Millers put that one through. That costs us in total about $6,000. Yeah, yeah. And so, Luther,
Yeah, I kind of want to add on something about the blessing of getting to sponsor children in this organization. We've sponsored children in other organizations, we never hear or see much about them, except for a mass email, not with Mike and Glenda. And a couple times a year, we receive a copy of the report cards, so we know their progress. Every week, if they're struggling, like our one boys right now, we can pray for them, that particular thing. But we also get an updated photograph and a letter or a note made by them, which, man, we hang them up. Because they're our children, so we hang those pictures up, just like their own children, and they are. But that is unique in his ministry, because you're not just sending your money blank somewhere and hoping that kid's getting it. We know where that money's going, you know. And when I was there last time, what a blessing it was to get to sit and meet both those children face to face and their parents. I didn't know how to speak their language, but we learned out really quick how to communicate, even though, you know, there was someone there to speak, but I can communicate with them. So you don't get that in another ministry like this. Mike and Glenda, on top of that, we send them a financial gift, right? We just send it to them so that they can buy them a birthday gift, a Christmas gift. They personally take them, and then what they do is they take a photograph so that we see. And so that's a blessing. If you're donating a child, it is cheap. $20 more, or what's that, like 4 Dunkin' Donut coffees?
I don't know, the price is going up here, I don't need a chair going anywhere.
Sponsor somebody.
Yeah, thank you, Luther, yes.
Up to Comiagua, for quite a few years, you were looking at trying to get electricity up there to those homes. What happened with that?
The government, actually through politics, because they all want everybody's vote, so the socialistic government went in and put up poles, but only down to one main road. And so what they've done is taken triplex and wired it to their whole house, but they cut tree branches and stuffed the wire underneath it to keep it up in the air.
Yeah, I've seen some of those.
Yeah, so they're like up in the air, but other politicians come in and put in 6x6 steel beams into the ground and lift it up higher because the trucks couldn't get under. Like our big bus, it's hard to get through some areas. So yeah, they're getting electricity, but not everybody. And everybody has a latrine. No running water, it's all wells. So the table level is about 24 feet into the ground. And my dad witnessed that. He was like totally shocked. Watch this guy go down literally a hole like the size of this table and get lowered down with a rope. And he's like, what the heck are they doing, Michael? I said, they're digging a well. He's like, I said, yeah, most people have claustrophobia, you know, but they haul up the buckets until they strike water, and then they keep digging down enough to where, I mean, Vaughn, remember that 80-year-old guy? I mean, what a miracle. An 80-year-old man dug his own well, and it was, what, 80 feet, I think it was? Yeah, 80 feet in the ground, and Vaughn got to witness this. And 80 feet hand dug. So, yeah. So, the water's nasty. So, them having those water filters is keeping the water clean for them. So, yeah. We are up to, we didn't want to do sponsorships out there. But God says different. And so he said, no, go out there. And we're up to 30 kids sponsored in Comiagua. So what we do, though, not are all sponsored. Half of them are, half of them aren't. But what we do is we put them into a probation program. So what they have to do is prove to us after a year that they get the grades up, be responsible with that scholarship before we try to assign them to a sponsor, because they're a risk. Because everybody wants to see success. And we've had sponsors that, and they're here, they can say not everybody passes and not everybody goes through the system. And we do have failure, but that's life. I can't stop life. And so it does happen. But on the mean average, they all get through. But you gotta be very patient. We're working with 4 right now that are tremendous. One little girl, Glenda went up to confront her last Saturday before I got here, and we were cracking up laughing as we were eating lunch. And she walked up to Glenda and she went, you don't tell me about my grades. She had 50s. And Glenda's like, you know, Glenda, she's got the hunger and sass. And I was like, child, you're best. And Glenda was patient. I was like watching that hot sauce boil up in the mouth. And Andrea's going, ugh. And you complicate that with menopause and everything else, that's just like a comic bomb. No, thank you. Glenda laughs with me, so don't think I'm talking jokes behind her. I joke right along with her. That's what keeps our marriage going. So, any other questions? Yes, James.
Certified, if they are.
What's that?
Certification?
For
Schools, he's asking if the schools are certified.
yes, they are. They are not all though. That's a good question. Like the 21st of October high school that we helped to remodel, and we spent 5 years there. They are the 1 out of 12 out of the entire country that are certified. So in other words, when those graduates come through, and that's where our major production of graduates come from, those certificates weigh more than anything else. So when the university is looking at students coming in, 21st of October, definitely, they're prepared. Other schools, they'll push it to the side and they'll ignore it for a while because they don't have the weight or they're not certified. Yeah, good question.
How do the kids in Tegucigalpa get to school?
Walking, 30-minute walk, all the way up with their mothers, and then all the way back. If the mother can't, they all have groupings. They'll walk in. Yeah, everybody walks in that hot 95-degree sun. Yeah, now what a typical day is, if you want to know, is they have to get up at 4:30. They have a little bit of milk or a cup of coffee, a tortilla, maybe some beans if they have time. They get in their uniform and march it to be in school by 7. When they're done by 11:30, they have to walk all the way back. Once they get home, they don't eat lunch. They have to wash by hand in a pila their clothes, get it on the line because they got to make sure it's dry for the next day. That's why our sponsor children are more blessed because every year they get a new uniform. So if they're still fitting the uniform from the year before, they have 2 to play with. So if one's wet, they can wear the dry one. So that's where it's a benefit. Yeah. We're really on top of our kids. You know, they start whining, don't whine. Any other questions? These are good questions. Harold?
You mentioned that of the kids who have gone through the sponsorship program, none of them have wanted to run to the U.S.
No.
Which I think is really commendable. I was also wondering about the kids that go through and complete the program and are now out and have good jobs.
Right.
Have they picked up the sense of attitude and possibilities, and
No.
potential to be helping others?
Yeah, actually, Stephanie Quinones is the one that we put through the private school. She's now sponsoring a child. Andrea, who works for us and is still going to university, she sponsors a child. Yeah, so these kids are tied in, not to us. We always tell them, because they want to get back to the ministry. I'm like, no, I don't want to make it look funky. So it doesn't look good, and go sponsor a child on your own. So Andrea wanted to, she works for us. And I was like, no, Andrea, it's commendable what you're saying, but I'd rather if you pick a kid, sponsor it, and I'd rather have it not be part of your family, because you're not going to get experience off of it. So I want you to be outside your family, and then pick up a child, and she did. And she's now their mother, you know, and she goes and checks on them while she's working for us. So yeah, they have done that. Most of the kids, though, I'll say, when Glenda was checking on them, they are helping their families, like their mother and fathers, that sacrificed so much in the process, helping them building a home. A lot of them were telling us that, or helping their parents because they gotten so old. Like the one dietitian that you saw in the photo, Carlos Martinez, his mother is very crippled and always has been, and she never had a home of her own. He's paying for a home to be built that's handicapped accessible. So those kids are putting it back. Others, most of them, a lot of them are married, like Christian Rodriguez, he has 2 kids. They call me grandpa, which is weird. And so yeah, they're cute, but he's supporting his mother who is diabetic. So they're all giving back and they're all humble about it, which is great. Even Alvaro, who's making all that money, I thought, and Brad can tell you, he's a very humble man, and you can't tell that he's that well off, and he has diplomatic status. He was joking with me on WhatsApp saying, yeah, I can drive anywhere in the world, and I don't have to have a license, because I have diplomatic papers. So I said, wow, I hope you're a good driver. So yeah, Pastor Jeff?
Yeah, the separation of church and state that we have here, it must not be present there in the same way, because you can get into the schools and you can evangelize.
It's, It's changed since the socialistic government came in. We're on our last year, we're praying that they get booted. Usually Honduras mimics the United States. So if the United States is going through that type of feeling, Honduras quickly switches. If we go Republican here, the pendulum switches in the country usually, in Honduras. So the interesting part of that is, yeah, you have the liberty to, but in some schools, you can run into some difficulties. But mostly, yeah, you can pray and talk about the Lord. So they welcome it because they're Christians themselves. Yeah, so it's kind of nice.
Over there.
So the difference between the regular sponsorship schools and Glenda, same amount
Yes.
today?
Yep.
What else do they benefit in Glenda? Are they going to schools and having uniforms?
Yes.
and everything?
Yeah.
What about the program that you're doing within the community restored environment?
That's all separate. That comes out of general ministry. So the
So
general
is there
fund.
any way that you can have something where we can sponsor that happening for you?
Yeah, if you want to write to the general fund specifically put for the reading and writing program, Bible workbook program, however you want to write it on your check, that's perfect because really all the general fund is doing is supporting that. And we spend probably $1,500 to $2,000 for books. So we do give them proper materials so they can learn. But yeah, no, the children in Tegucigalpa, when they're sponsored as a sponsored child, even if they're on probation, they get the same thing. Everything's the same. And what we do on top of that, and you guys don't know this, but the other children, so we don't cause animosity and problems, I was going to say problems in the community. My Spanish is more prevalent than English. And so what is going on is what we do is we make packets, a general packet. That's what Brad was referring to. We make a general packet and we give every child 2 notebooks, pencils, etc., scissors, glue, and stuff. So every kid out there gets something. So that way they're like, well, I don't have a sponsorship, I'm not going to do anything, God hates me, I suck. Yeah, no, you're beautiful, you're doing good. And sometimes what I do